Hello, everyone. Welcome to Just for the Love of Reading, where we read books to inspire, motivate, and empower. Today's book in our book club series is titled All We Ever Wanted by Emily Giffin. Now, I don't know if you all have noticed, but I seem to have a pattern where once I read a novel by an author, I just kind of read novels, a couple of their novels afterwards, right? So this is actually my third novel from Emily Giffin. The first one was Something Borrowed. The other one was Something Blue, which is part of a trilogy. And then this one is a separate novel, again by the same author. And yes, I really enjoy her writing style. I enjoy her storylines, her plots. And yeah, so I'm really just in my Emily Giffin era right now. So this is the book that we will be discussing today. So this novel falls into the following genres: women's fiction, contemporary fiction and drama, domestic fiction, and literary fiction. This novel takes place in Nashville, Tennessee, in an upper echelon elite community that's filled with galas, private schools, and beautifully decorated homes. The world of these characters turn upside down when a scandal takes place, where an illicit photo is taken of a teenage girl at a high school party, and this scandal affects the lives of everyone involved. This causes the adults and the students from two different worlds to come together or cross paths in an attempt to deal with the situation and come to the bottom of what really happened that night at the party. So let's dive into the characters. We have on one side, we have the Browning family, which consists of Kirk, Nina, and their son Finch. And then we have Tom, a single father, and his daughter Lila. And then we have the supporting characters. So all of the characters in the story, the adults as well as the teenagers, they do have friends in which they, confide in and that help them through the times. So there's also those other supporting characters in the novel as well. So let's dive into a little bit of background information on the main characters. And this really helps the reader understand how each character decides to deal with the scandal that takes place and, disrupts their lives. So we'll start with Kirk Browning. Kirk Browning is the husband of Nina and the father of Finch. And the reader learns early on that he is a man of great wealth. Basically, he was born into a wealthy family, so he comes from generational wealth. And he did have a good amount of wealth on his own when he started up a software company with a friend of his. However, it's when he sells the software company that this is what catastrophes Kirk into a level of wealth and socioeconomic status. Then we have Nina. So Nina grew up in the other side of Tennessee, which is Bristol. I believe the town is called Bristol, Tennessee. And she grew up in a middle-class family. And so she ends up marrying Kirk, and by doing so, she basically moves up in her socioeconomic status, and she meets Kirk in university, and they end up getting married. And their son Finch is born into wealth, right? And so he, up until now, he's a teenager now, has lived a very comfortable life with his parents' love and support, and he's always had that soft cushion and that understanding that he is privileged. And also to mention that Finch does go to a private school, Windsor Academy. Now we have the other characters, Tom and Lila. So Tom is a single father as I had mentioned before, and the mother of his child ends up, leaving the family to pursue her own goals. Now, she is mentioned in the story. She still keeps in contact with her daughter. However, she's not present in the story. Then we have Lila, right? So Lila is the daughter of Tom, and Lila is, from I think it's fair to say a working class family, right? Because I believe her dad is a carpenter, and so she comes from that family, but she goes to Windsor Academy due to her academic strengths, right? And so in the Windsor Academy world, she's known as the student that got into this elite private school on financial aid. So she is from a different social class. However, she was able to get into Windsor Academy, the same private school that Finch goes to. And so we see how this plays out later on in the story, that despite the fact that Lila and Finch attend the same school, there's still that distinction in social class amongst the students at that academy. So let's get back to the plot. What is happening in this story? So as I had mentioned, a scandal takes place at a party held by high school students. And these high school students are Finch and Lila. So what ends up happening is that Lila attends a party that is thrown by Finch's friend, Beau. And by the end of the party, a photo is taken of Lila in a very suggestive way. And this photo is passed around to the school community. And this photo that's taken of Lila is taken from Finch's phone. So the story and the plot of this novel really centers around getting to the bottom of what happened that night at that party. How was that photo taken, and what's going to happen to the people who took that photo of Lila, and what are the consequences for the students that took the picture. As the reader, the main theme that I took from this novel really centers around social class and privilege. And as the reader, I was able to see the way in which social class and privilege influenced the mindset of the characters, as well as the way in which the situation is dealt with, and how each character how each character experiences the process of this situation, right? So we have Tom, who's the father of Lila. He is the father of the girl who's had this illicit photo taken of her. And so he wants to see justice served. He wants to see the person, and at this point they believe it's Finch, who took the picture to have some level of consequence, for doing this. Then we have the Browning family. So we have Kirk. Again, I mentioned that Kirk comes from a very wealthy family. And so his mindset is he's really able to buy his way out of things. He's used to getting what he wants. He's used to paying people off. He's used to having things go into his favor. And so the way that he's dealing with this is that, you know what? Everyone has a price. How can I make the situation go away? To the point where he's downplaying, what his son is being accused of. Because again, the picture that was taken is found on his son's phone, right? And so at this point, Tom wants to see justice being served for his daughter, because at this point, it's Finch who is responsible for this act. And so we see the way in which Kirk decides to deal with it. And then we see Nina. All right, so Nina, again, I said, has come from a middle-class family. However, she has been able to, through her marriage with Kirk, increase her social economic status and really just live a life of wealth and affluence. Now, Nina's point of view is actually the complete opposite of her husband's, and if anything, closer to Tom's, because she wants to see justice served. She sees this as something that was, just not a great thing. She's beginning to worry and fear about the young man that her son is growing up to be. And she just wants to, at one point make sure that justice is served. And on the other side, really just allow her son to really own up to what he did, if this is what he did. And so we see that Nina is at a crossroads and is really not dealing with this in the same way that her husband is dealing with it. The reader is also able to see how the experiences of Tom and Nina in their younger years has played into their point of view and the way that they feel about the situation. So of course they're parents, right? And they have their concerns as parents dealing with the situation with their teenagers. However, the reader learns that Nina had an unfortunate experience in university that she never really felt justice was served. And it's not the same situation as Lila's, but it's similar in the sense where, a woman or a young female has been violated and justice has not been served. So the reader is able to see that, Nina wasn't able to do anything about what happened to her in university. And so this incident that happened has sort of haunted her and has carried on throughout her life as an adult. And so now that she sees this situation happening with another female and one that involves her son, she is really concerned about making sure that the truth comes out and justice is served. And then we have Tom, again, who is a working class man, and he also had an incident when he was growing up with a woman from a higher social status than him. And so he dealt with an experience where he was exploited. And so the reader is able to see how this also haunts Tom in his adulthood, and it also plays out in the way in which he deals with what has happened to his daughter, right? So in Tom's mind, he's just tired of people of a higher social class, those that come from wealth, really get away with exploiting those from the lower, what is considered to be, what they would consider to be a lower class. And so we see how the past incidences of Nina and Tom has affected the way in which they're dealing with this situation with their own children. And again, Kirk has come from a wealthy family, and so he is used to getting his way and getting things, making things disappear, and so he goes with that same approach, and he doesn't see anything wrong with it. There are the characters Finch and Lila, right? And this is where actually the entire plot stems from this incident that takes place at a party attended by both of them. So Finch and Lila are teenagers. They both attend this private school. They're teenagers, very young, very impressionable. Finch's friend is throwing a party at his house while his parents are away for the weekend. Finch invites Lila. Lila has a crush on Finch. She goes. They're doing and engaging in things, in substances to be exact, that they're not supposed to be dealing with at a young age. Things get out of hand, a photo is taken, and here is the scandal. So we have Finch and Lila, as I said before, two young, impressionable teenagers dealing with their own situations as high school students, as teenagers, their own inner emotions and feelings, as well as the things that they have to deal with among their peer group. So we have Finch, who comes from a wealthy family, and he is moving towards his father's behavior and his father's way of dealing with things, in the sense of, will he be able to possibly get away with this? Will there be consequences for him? And so we see this young adolescent boy really just, turning into someone who his mother does not approve of and does not want him to be. She wants him to be a young man that takes accountability for his actions and does the right thing. However, the reader is able to see and not really know which direction he's going in terms of doing the right thing or behaving in a manner that's more similar to his father. Then we have Lila, right? A young girl, just really trying to fit into a community where she is aware of her social status amongst her peers, despite the fact that she goes to the same school with them. And she's just trying to navigate her way through life and figure out her emotions with a boy that she has a crush on. And unfortunately, this is what, this unfortunate situation happens. And so she's torn with who and what to believe. And she's also dealing with her own feelings on the matter. And so the reader's able to really dive into the thoughts of the characters, the young characters as well, and just kind of see how they're navigating through this whole thing and how they are choosing to look at the situation. So that really sums up the plot and the theme, or one of the themes that I noticed from the novel, All We Ever Wanted by Emily Giffin. Another thing to point out is that I really like the fact that the author decides to write the novel from the point of view of the characters Nina, Tom, and Lila, right? And so the reader really does see the point of view from each character in first person, right? So it's one of those books where, like, one chapter it's about Tom, one chapter it's from the point of view of Nina, one chapter it's from the point of view of Lila. And so this really does give a more personal dive into the mindset of each character. And I just thought it was a really interesting plot. It really deals with, just parents and how parents are navigating their lives with their teenage children, right? And just the things that they have to go through with, watching their children grow and the changes that come with it. And then you have the characters, Finch and Lila, who are high school students, just dealing with high school situations and, things like that. And, that coming of age story, sort of. And so we see those dynamics in the story, all of these put into one novel. And so, yeah, it's very, very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy this author and her style of writing, as well as her plots. They really do kind of get you in like just deep involved and wanting to know what's happening next. And this is what this novel has done for me. So if you're looking for a novel, All We Ever Wanted by Emily Giffin, I highly recommend it. So for those of you who have read it, let me know. What are your thoughts on the scandal? What are your thoughts on the characters, right? Tom, Kirk, Nina, Finch, and Lila. What did you take from it? What were some of the themes that you took from this story? Please share in the comments below. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.